Hey everyone, let's wrap up August. August was an amazing reading month for me. I read 13 different things, and of those I put up single reviews for 7. I'm amazed at myself. This hasn't happened in, I don't know, forever. So apart from the reviews, I only uploaded a letter to August, and yeah. So let's get into all the books. Let's start with the books I put up reviews for, in no particular order. I reviewed the audiobook of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce that was narrated by Colin Farrell. And this was the first time I had contact with the story, and I highly enjoyed the audiobook. I can only recommend it either as a reread if you've already read the book, or if you want to just get into this book. It's a nice way to get into that, and Colin Farrell's narration is amazing. I talk more about all these things in the review. I read an Enchantment of Ravens as an ebook, and I went into it just hoping to get some fluffy, light, fun fantasy, and that's what I got. I talk more about the story in the ebook, but I really enjoyed the writing. I liked the main character and the story, how it progressed, and the things that happened. Highly enjoyable. The next book I want to talk about I actually read twice in the month already, and that was The 50-Year Sword by Mark Z. Danielewski. And you know I really like Mark Z. Danielewski for his strange books, and this is no exception. We have exceptional formatting again, and the story interacting with the way it is told. So this is a book to experience again, more than to actually enjoy the story. That's exactly why I read it twice, because the first time I was more about the experience of the book and didn't really pay that much attention to the story and how it unfolded. And so the second time around I discovered more about the story that I missed the first time around. But I really enjoyed reading this, and if you like strange books, check this out. The Ghost of Heaven by Marcus Sedgwick also offer you a way of experiencing the book in different ways. This is a book that is told in 4 parts, and you can read the 4 parts in any order you want. So I read them in the order they were published because you can read them in any order you want. And I enjoyed the second story the most. The others I was a little bit about. Overall I still had questions, but more details in the review. I wouldn't recommend this as a starting book for his work. I read other books that I enjoyed more, but I do like his writing, so it was worth reading it, and you could really fly through it because it read like 4 short novellas of about 100 pages. I also reread another of the Discworld novels, full review up, and this was a blast. This is one of the watch books, and I completely forgot about it. This is, I think, the first book that I've only read once before. I'm starting to reach the part of my reread where I haven't read every book multiple times. I'm still not at the point where I started switching from German translation to the original English. So reading this was like reading it for the first time, and I loved that. It's amazing to reread a book that you have read years ago and you know you love and you remember details of, but you have forgotten others completely. And that was an amazing experience for me. I also finished my Russian Lit project. I read the last book this month as well, which I haven't reviewed separately. It is A Month in the Country. I enjoyed it. It's a short play of someone going to visit friends and being in love with the best friend's wife, and stories evolving around that, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun short play. The book is about 100 pages. But that allowed me to finally finish the Anna Karenina Fix. This is the thing that I started the Russian Lit project for, because it talks about the 11 works that I read over the course of the last year. I reviewed the Anna Karenina Fix completely with my thoughts on my Russian Lit project. But I discovered that reading the books before reading the Anna Karenina Fix gave me a different experience of the Anna Karenina Fix, which I highly enjoyed. It was less about the books than I had expected in the beginning going into it, but more about the author's with Groskopf's experience with the stories and how she related them to her life and at what parts of her life she read them, and also her experience with being Russian or wanting to be Russian and the Russian language. And overall, I really enjoyed doing it this way. You don't have to do it this way. You can just read the Anna Karenina Fix and enjoy the book as well. The last book I reviewed was also an audiobook, A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Emma McBride, and I went into this expecting something completely different. I go into detail of this in my review, but the book is an experimental writing project thing, I think, where I started on audio and I thought it was written in verse, but looking at the text, it's more chopped up writing, and it's expressing the way the narrator thinks, and we are basically in her brain all the time, experience her life and how she experiences things. And it's very traumatic because there's a lot of abuse that you experience firsthand, and I think it is an interesting book and it works very well. I hesitate to say it's a good book because for me a good book also needs to give you some part of enjoyment and not only work. I'm not interested in the story, but the book works very well for what it does. I don't know. More in the review. Okay, what else did I read that I didn't review separately? I finished The Invisible Dragon. This is a non-fiction book about art. And I read a book by Hickey, air guitar, years ago. My intention reading this or picking this up was to get back into art a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit of distance to art, and my interest in art has been, not working well lately. So I figured, since I liked air guitar so much and it helped me see art in a different way and experience it, if I read something else by him, I might get inspired again to look at art more and go to museums more and just interact more with art again. But unfortunately, it didn't work. Partly, this book is very complex and I should have looked up more words and works of art that he's talking about, but I also found myself not listening to what I was reading. So I think I cannot judge this book because I don't know if it did a good job or if I was not interested. I'm a little bit bummed out that it didn't work because I'm still not interested in art again. Something that worked out much better for me was re-listening to The Dispatcher by John Scalzi. I've listened to this story, I think, twice, 3 times now. It's a very short audiobook of 3 to 4 hours. You can listen to it in one go. The story is set in the future where people return after they are murdered. So if you murder someone, they come back to life just a few hours before they were murdered. And that is a very interesting concept because now people hire these dispatchers to kill people if something goes wrong in an emergency room, for example, or when it's a difficult heart operation. You just have someone there to kill the person so they come back and then they get a second chance at life. So that's the basis of the world. But of course, something happens with a dispatcher disappearing, the police starting to look for him, and you get sucked into a little mystery of the world of the dispatchers and the darker side of what is possible to do with this kind of world where people come back to life when they are murdered, and also how you murder people in this kind of world. I highly enjoyed it. The writing is amazing. Zachary Quinto narrates an audiobook and he's doing an amazing job. Like I said, I've listened to it 3 times already. I also continued my read of the Sin du Jour books. I picked up Idle Ingredients and noticed that I've left too much time between the 3rd book and the 4th book because I couldn't really remember all the details that were going on. So it took me a little bit to get back into it. But overall, it was just as much fun as before. But I think there's some overarching drama coming next. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to enjoy that, as I really like the one story concept of the novella series. The last book I finished was on audio. It was basically I ran out of credits, but I still wanted to listen to something other than I had. So I got one of the monthly originals that you get as a member at audible.com, and it was a very short, fun audio play, Foreverywhere. And it's about a unicorn, which is the last unicorn who wants to play in a band. So he goes out and finds the band, and you get interactive music happening. You are addressed as the audience sometimes, and it's so much fun to listen to. It's just 3 hours and I just flew through it. I really enjoyed it. It's narrated by multiple people, and like I said, you hear the music they are playing, so you're basically involved in the whole thing. It was fun. It was just fun. I totally forgot to tell you about The Possessed by Elif Batuman. I picked this up after reading the Anna Karenina Fix because Viv Groskopf said this was her inspiration to write the book. So I expected another fun book, and according to the subtitle, about eccentric people and eccentric stories with Russian literature. Unfortunately, I didn't get that at all. The Possessed is a book about Elif Batuman's graduation years studying Russian literature and the experiences she had and her friends had. And it was all very boring, and it sounded so depressingly sad and negative. I don't know if it was her narration, I listened to the audiobook, or if it was the way she writes, because I've never read anything by her. But I couldn't really pinpoint it. I was not interested in her experiences, which is, I guess, valid. It doesn't make it good or bad. I was just not interested. And I was lacking eccentric stories. Maybe I just didn't get it, but I didn't like that. The last book I want to mention is The Digital Heretic. This is the second book in the Life is Game or Game is Life. I forgot the series name. I read the first book, The Game, years ago, and I liked the idea. I wasn't quite pleased with the writing. It had some flaws where I was not perfect, but the idea of the story is interesting and I liked some of the characters. So I got the next 3 books in the series on ebook back then, but I never really picked them up. So I started the second book this month, and I quickly realized that I am disturbed by the writing more than I thought, and I can't really get into the characters like I used to, and I found myself not caring. The book series by now has 10 books, and it's getting very complex, which I still like the idea, and I think that the story can have a lot of discussion and questions and ideas about how life works and if we're in a simulation and what if we're in a simulation of a simulation and things like that. But I lost a little bit of the interest, especially since I'm not into the characters and the writing that much. So I decided to DNF that series. And that was my August. Like I said, I had an amazing reading month with a lot of reads, short reads, but fun reads, and there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed myself. Let's see what September brings. I'm going to be on vacation 3 weeks, so a lot of extra reading time. So now tell me how your August was. Did you have an amazing reading month as well, or did you find that August, with all the heat waves that were going on here in Europe and I think abroad as well, that you just didn't find enough time to read because it was always too hot? Let's talk books and comments, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.